And then after this 40-year history, this isn't an abstract conversation, what has happened during those 40 years? And I would suggest that there have been 6 primary advantages to this government that we've seen. I'll mention the first one because this is the one everyone likes to talk about. Ad valorem savings and lower taxes. That's the one that everybody is attracted to. That's the one everyone wants to talk about. And I'm not trying to minimize it, but I hate for that to obscure the other parts of this discussion. We have, as I mentioned before, the lowest ad valorem rates of anywhere in the state. When I became chief of staff for John Mullaney, he and I had gone to law school together. I graduated from law school in 1980, been practicing law about 30 years. I became his chief of staff. We began decreasing our ad valorem rate, did it for 8 consecutive years during his term. When I stayed on as general counsel for the next mayor, we increased it the first 4 years of his. We were the only one in the state of Florida to be doing it. So when Governor Christ in 2007 wanted to have these formulas for mandatorily rolling back property taxes, the only community in the state of Florida that was opposed was us. We were opposed to the rollback because we'd already done it. And by the way, Tallahassee gets in the way. Washington gets in the way. You want to help us? Leave us alone. Leave us alone because we can take care of this. We are doing it ourselves, being stewards for our future. If we want to tax ourselves at a higher rate, that's our business. If we want to do it at a lower rate, it should be our business. But we have already done this. But one of the advantages that people talk about is the tax savings, and that is because the model is more efficient. I'll give you an example of Miami-Dade. Talk about that under the second one. They have a county government and 35 municipalities. That's 35 public works departments plus a county public works department. 35 city attorney's offices plus the Miami-Dade county attorney's office. The county attorney's office has 80 lawyers in Miami-Dade. The city of Miami has 30 lawyers. The city of Miami Beach has another 30 lawyers. Pretty typical. They don't have a shot at this because there's too many structural barriers to this ever happening there. It could happen in Tampa where there's only 3 municipalities, actually 4, but Tampa's the big one. And the good news is it actually is a possibility here because you're not dealing with the 38 municipalities and the separate entities of Palm Beach. Here, you have a very clean discussion, a very clear choice, and some real possibilities. So as we were going through this discussion, they looked around, and what people were looking at primarily was the savings because we didn't have the duplication, we had more efficiency, and we could be less bureaucratic, which leads to the second big advantage. Not only is there the ad valorem savings, but you can become less regulatory, more streamlined, more business-friendly. It truly helps for economic development, and you're doing it on a county-wide basis. Imagine, in some of those Florida counties I described, having to deal with multiple jurisdictions, the county government and multiple city governments for developers and business people say it's not worth it. I'm just going to go somewhere else. I was fortunate enough to be a part of Leadership Florida a few years ago, and I was with the chief of staff in Miami, and I said to him, "Search here." I said, "You've got 1.2 million people in the unincorporated areas. You've got 2.4 million people overall, multiple municipalities, county government. How do you get anything done?" And he says, "Rick, we don't. We really don't. They have ground themselves to a halt. Tremendous barriers to getting anything done." Now, by the way, will you become less regulatory? Will you become less bureaucratic? Will you become more streamlined? That depends on your talent. But structurally, you have the opportunity to do it. Other structures create inherent bureaucracy. Other structures create inherent problems and regulations that are difficult for business and otherwise. So the second advantage that people like to talk about is the less regulatory piece. The third piece that our former Mayor Austin likes the most, we were in Escambia County, they said, "What are the biggest advantages of consolidated government?" He said, "Let me give you 3. Accountability, accountability, and accountability." And that's what we like. This also goes to Mr. Goldsmith's comments about transparency and who is responsible. One of my lines I've always liked is Admiral Rickover, shared responsibility means no one's responsible for everyone doing this stuff. And in consolidated government, you have a CEO. And I'm a big believer in a CEO system, and I believe the CEO matters. And the CEO for this consolidated government is accountable. And CEOs make a difference. They make a difference at the national level, they make a difference at the private, they make a difference on football teams. I mean, the CEO does matter. And so from an accountability standpoint, the public now knows who's responsible. Fourthly, we talk about intra-governmental litigation. I will tell you that around the rest of the state, it is fairly common for people to sue each other. It's also fairly common for multiple entities to be at odds with each other, simply because they have separate legal counsel. And when they can't work it out among themselves, on a policy standpoint, they then go to their lawyers to force it. I, as general counsel, do everything I can to try to avoid a legal resolution in terms of pure might, as opposed to the public policy discussion. And so in Jacksonville, we try to separate the public policy issue from the legal issue. And if there's a legal issue with regard to authority, then I have the authority under the charter to give those opinions. And by the way, the opinions I've given have placed limitations on the power of the mayor. I had one legal opinion that said he couldn't transfer millions of dollars from one place to another without council approval. He didn't like it. City council, I gave a legal opinion that said they could not unilaterally get pension benefits until collective bargaining was done at the table. They didn't like that. The school district, I gave a legal opinion that said they had to have competitive bidding for their bus contracts. They couldn't just give it to their friends. They didn't like that. And so what happens is that's that lack of that loss of sovereignty, because you're being able to speak with one voice. Structurally, you begin to get in position for what I consider to be sort of 5 and 6 of the advantages, which is the ability to speak with one voice. The public policy advantage to me is the most significant. And that is the structural opportunity, not guaranteed. Takes leadership, takes stewardship, takes vision, takes lots of good things. But the structural opportunity to create county-wide public policy on areas that affect the whole county, whether it's transportation, whether it's the environment, whether it's finances, whatever that is, whether it's economic development. And that, to me, that ability, and puts you in a position, by the way, for regionalism, too, because you're now speaking with one voice as a county. It really improves your ability to speak as a region. That is a critical piece, the policymaking piece, which relates to number 6, which I'm simply going to call, I'm stealing this from a former mayor, clout. Clout. And by clout, what I mean is that despite our size, which is small, if we can speak with one voice after vigorous debate, and B, have a seat at the table, and bring all of our resources and constituents to bear for a purpose, whether that's in Tallahassee, whether that's in Washington, whether that's the NFL, we actually have the clout at the table to compete in ways that we could never compete